Hello?
Hi, Roseanne.
Okay, sorry.
It's so good to have you this evening, and we really are. It's a great honor and a privilege to hear you and to hear your amazing journey to Judaism and your roots, and the Lithuanian roots in particular. I have a strong affinity for.
Yeah, I'll just say that I grew up in an apartment building owned by my grandparents in Salt Lake City, Utah. And my grandparents sponsored many refugees after the war, after World War II. They sponsored and filled their apartment building with refugees from Nazi Germany and Poland and Austria-Hungary, resettlement camps that came to the United States and specifically to Salt Lake City. They were the sponsors of almost the entire, what ended up to be the entire Jewish population of Salt Lake City, Utah. So within that framework, I lived like it was our own little shtetl building in the heart of a very poor district in Salt Lake City, Utah. I guess you'd call that the ghetto there too. So it was a ghetto, a Jewish ghetto within a larger ghetto made up of people of color. And within that building were people who survived. And in the backyard of my grandmother's tenement building, there was a big garage, and in that garage were all kinds of trunks that said resettlement, Jewish resettlement. I can't remember the exact words, but anyway, I used to love to go out there and play in those trunks and climb on them and in them, and it was just so much a part of my consciousness. And the people who lived in the apartments had numbers on their arms, and it was a hotbed of PTSD, shall we say. And every Shabbat, every Friday night, we would have a Shabbat dinner at in my grandmother's apartment. And all the people would come and, that she invited. Mostly it was our family, but some of the people became my grandmother's dear friends, and they remained so all through her life. And they would come for Shabbat dinner, and I was very precocious as a child, and my grandmother had this great big windowsill that had a seat built into it, and that was my first stage. And I loved getting up there on Shabbat and entertaining, and that was a great audience. It was my favorite audience still, and I'm almost 70. I've been in front of a lot of audiences, but that was an incredible audience for me. And my act at the time was to reinterpret the works of Shirley Temple. And I sang The Good Ship, Lollipop, and all those things. And I tried to tell jokes and do a little song and dance number. And I looked forward to entertaining. I looked forward to the applause most of all. And I was very loved and admired by everybody. And that was kind of the makings of me, and to entertain and lift the spirits of people who had suffered so much. And there was just such a great feeling of connection for me between making people laugh, seeing them smile, and Shabbat. So that continues to be very much a part of who I am. And of course, my family, I didn't understand then that my family and friends, they were just a bunch of liars. And they told me that I was better than Shirley Temple, that I was cuter than Shirley Temple, more talented than Shirley Temple. And of course, I believed them. And later in my life, when I found out that that was just nothing but a lie, I was very, very angry. But at the time that I believed it, it was just a great little fantasy that I was able to, inhabit. And it was very tender and uplifting for me. The rest of the week was sad. People were sad, but they were very driven to find a new way, find a new home, find new lives after unspeakable things that they had been through, which I didn't really understand so much when I was a kid. But I knew that they had gone through something, and that it was kind of my duty to make them laugh and feel good. And that stuck in there, and it's still in there. And it is something that makes me very happy and feel very connected to Hashem. I feel it was a gift from Hashem that it's gotten me through many dark and sad times in my own life. I've never let go of that. I call it an umbilical cord, a spiritual umbilical cord, that I do have some ability to make people feel joy and laughter. That I think that's just, I'm so lucky that that was a gift given to me. I feel very blessed by that. And so do you want, I didn't know that I was going to be doing a whole monologue thing, but I would rather, talk to people and have questions, or, things like that. We could get into, is that what you want me to do, Lowell?
Roseanne, if you could, because we are all intrigued, and first of all, we're mesmerized by what you just said. It's absolutely stunning. There's a saying, 6 million tears fell to the ground, the world stood still, it didn't make a sound. And you singing to these Holocaust survivors, you uplifted their spirits and their souls. And it's just unbelievable. And wow, to hear this from you, it really is exceptionally special. So if you could just tell our viewers out there and people listening about how you discovered your Jewish roots and your connection to Lithuania. And
okay. Well, I didn't discover my Jewish roots. I was very embedded all the time. My family was very Orthodox. My grandmother, she was the matriarch of our family. And, like grandmothers are, and like I am now to my own family, the center of the home. But she was very Orthodox, and so that's how I was raised. I was raised as Orthodox, but when we moved out of the apartment building and became part of the larger culture, because we were working class, all of our neighbors were Mormon and such, and so my mother was, I think rightly so. When you're raised in, like I say, that apartment building was just a little ghetto, and shtetl is the better word. It was a very spiritual shtetl too. And then you go out in the larger community. My mother was kind of terrified for us. So we didn't talk about being Jewish in the larger community. But in our own home, we did. So we never lost or drifted from our religion and our culture. But when we were amongst our friends, we didn't talk about it too much because, it was kind of dangerous to do so. So we just, we fit in with, I wouldn't say assimilated, but as much as we, were able to, we fit in. We went to public school. And, our neighbors, we didn't have Christmas. That was a funny thing. We didn't celebrate Christmas like all of our neighbors. And our neighbors thought we didn't celebrate Christmas because we were poor. So every Christmas they would bring over, you know, a truckload of toys and gifts for us because they thought that the reason we didn't have a Christmas tree and all that stuff is because we couldn't afford it. So we just got lovely free gifts on Christmas, but we didn't, you know, protest or we tried not to stand out too much, you know, because, you know, as the Chinese say, the nail that stands up gets hammered down. So we tried to fit in. And at times when we didn't fit in, it was apparent and obvious that wasn't a safe way to go. So we also, because our friends, you know, attended youth groups and stuff, you know, I did too. I had this really weird experience that happened to me, which I'll talk about later. But, you know, in the interest of, I don't even know if that one fits yet, but a lot of oddly spiritual things happened to me when I was a kid. And, you know, so I ended up going with my friends to their Mormon church on Tuesdays. And it's really weird because I don't think that there's any other place in the world like Salt Lake City, Utah. So for the people of my hometown, they'll understand this, although now it's kind of different than it was when I grew up. But when I was about 5 years old, I fell on the table leg in our kitchen, and the right side of my face became paralyzed. I had Bell's palsy. And how it was, the culture of Salt Lake City is, you know, my mother and everybody in Utah, first she calls the rabbi to come and pray for me. I have this in my book, you know, I've written 3 books and this is in my book, My Life as a Woman. The first thing she does is call the rabbi to come and pray for me, and nothing changed in my face. And then the second thing, she asked her friends, and they sent their Mormon priest to come and pray for me, and it went away. So my mother took that as a sign. Everything is very much a sign in Salt Lake, that culture. So my mother took that as a sign that, you know, that the Mormon church was something we should be, you know, very much in touch with. And so I began to, you know, go around with my mother, and we spoke in Mormon churches about the healing of, you know, the Mormon priest prayers. Well, when I was 14, and I'm not going to put that down because I accept prayers from everybody. Anybody out there who wants to say a good prayer for me, I appreciate it. And I'll take it all. And I say them for everybody too. I don't have any chauvinistic views of any of that. I think there's one, and there's, you know, there's one big one for everybody. So we went around speaking. And then when I was about 14 years old, I was very neurotic. I'm sure everybody could figure that out. And when I was 14, I was reading medical journals, which happened to be my hobby. And I read about Bell's palsy, and it said it was largely a 48-hour condition. So I thought, oh my God. But then, you know, I don't discount any of the spiritual things that I learned. But, you know, you have to put things in context too. But so there was that. And when I was about 12 years old, I told my mother that I wasn't going to do the dualistic thing, because the thing is that we had to hide it from our grandmother that we were going to the Mormon church. We could never tell Bubby. Bubby was never, ever to know. And she knew, I think, because she would call us on Tuesday when we would go to the Mormon youth group. She would always call the house at the right times and ask us, what are you doing? Where have you been? And we had to lie, you know, oh, we were out. We went to the store. We could never say. So it was like, I always felt like I was raised as a spy, you know. I was always a spy, and I had to live a double life where I I couldn't let my grandmother know these things, and it did affect me. But that was how, that was my background there. And so I was two religions, and in the end, they all melted, and it just made God bigger to me. So does that answer a lot? And at the same time, it was kind of a refuge too, because I remember I was only 3 years old, and these people who had survived such terrible things, they thought, when you think about PTSD and trauma and horror and all that stuff, they thought that it shouldn't be hidden from me. And when I was 3 years old, I was, my grandmother and her friends would watch the Eichmann trial. It was on television, and they would insist that I watch it too.
At the age of 3?
At the age of 3. And so that affected me in many, many deep psychological ways. And they would also tell stories of horror, and they would always point to me too. It was horrifying. They would say, little girls like her, and they point to me. They took them and they did this and that and the other. And I was just horrified, because I thought we still lived in those times. I didn't understand that it was a different time. I thought that was the world we were living in now. And so I was very, very traumatized as a child. And the pictures I saw, they showed me, and they said, some of them would say, oh, she's just a kid, she shouldn't see. And others would say, no, she should see. All Jewish children should see what they did to us. And, of course, this was the 50s, and I had no refuge from it. And it was unceasing. And, I think of the children today that are being abused, and I think I have understanding of the terror of the terror that children of this world live in somewhat. Of course, I don't really have all, but I have some, and I had no refuge from any of it. And so the only place that I could go to escape the horrors that I thought were right outside our door, I thought we lived in the Warsaw Ghetto. And the only refuge I had was God, and I retreated deeply into the notion and the space and the consciousness of God to find freedom from the horrors that surrounded me as a child. That, and doing my Shirley Temple Act. And luckily for me, I was able to find it in my mind. I found a safe space, and I've never let go of that. And it's never let go of me. So also, the things that my family lived through in Lithuania were also told to me. And it's, when you're the child of Holocaust survivors or pogrom survivors, or just Jewish people in general who lived in Europe and lived through it, there aren't really a lot of words to explain the psychological and spiritual labyrinth that you find yourself in. My grandmother told us that, when she was a little girl, she remembers being 9 years old, and she was the only girl. She was the oldest girl. And so they would send her out to pull the boots off of dead German soldiers to bring home, so the kids in the family had shoes. And she had twin brothers who were 12 years old, and her mother, this was before the Shoah, because Lithuania was the first place, really, that people were mass murdered in the Nazi Holocaust. But she remembers before that, that her mother went to get medicine for her twin brothers who were 12 and studying for their bar mitzvah. And the pharmacist gave them poison. And the mother brought home the medicine and gave it to her sick children, and they died. And my grandmother witnessed that. My grandmother and her sister came over here when they were 15 years old to America as seamstresses. And also my grandmother was a musical student, so she came to study at music conservatory in Salt Lake City, Utah. And they're the only ones who survived of their family. There were 3 sisters. And she worked hard and sent money home. She had 10 brothers and sisters at that time. And then at one point she got a letter from the Red Cross that said, your family from Aberniki, Lithuania, all of your family, they had a farm. They were farmers, flax farmers. They were marched out of their village and buried alive by the Germans and Lithuanians at the very beginning of the Shoah, the Holocaust. And the Red Cross, and she said, where can I find their graves? And the Red Cross said, there are no graves, because the Red Cross has always been incredibly anti-Semitic. I don't know if people know that, but and unfeeling toward Jews. And so that was the mentality and the psychological makeup of the woman I learned Torah from, and who was the woman that I loved most on the earth.
Roseanne, can I just mention, it must have been exceptionally difficult for you as a young girl to hear these horrendous stories that happened to your dear family. I mean, it's a very hard thing for a young child to comprehend.
Yeah, it caused a lot of psychological damage to me. And, you try to put yourself back together. I think I started going to head shrinkers when I was about 6 years old. And I've been to about 3,000 of them, trying to piece myself back together. I don't know if psychologically I ever was put back together, but I do know that spiritually, I never let go of the umbilical cord to Hashem that kept me whole in that way. So all this stuff out here, this worldly stuff, as we say when we're Torah students, the 99%, that's always been kind of a crazy dance in my life. But the 1% that connects me to the holy has always been very strong. And that's what matters most to me, what is the most important to me. Still throughout everything. So it's kind of like the double spy world, I'm out there and I'm doing this and that in that world, but I know who I am, and I have no doubt, and I have no fear, and I have no separation. So in one way it served me spiritually, and in another way it's just been a crazy. I have a spiritual sight that I think I was given at 3. I was going to say, when I was 3, I was alone in my grandmother's bathroom, where I used to go to escape my family, especially when they would start retelling things and talking about things that were so dark. And I would go in the bathroom and I would kind of hide. And I would lock the bathroom door, which was really hard because I was really short. And I'd reach up and I'd turn this little black knob, and then they'd all go, "Oh, she locked herself in there again." And they go, "Stop touching that thing. Go go turn it towards the heater, turn the knob towards the heater. And in my mind, it was like, you don't understand. I'm locking you out. I'm not locking me in. And I had a safe space in that bathroom. And I used to pray and talk to God in there. And I used to become very, very close with God in there. And I also saw things and I heard things, and I guess you'd call it visions. That's what they call it. And you better be careful if you tell anybody that you had visions, because right away they'll say you're schizophrenic and put you in a nut house, like they do to anybody who has sixth sight or a deep connection to Hashem and the spiritual. And luckily I knew that. But what I saw a man. He came to me, and he was on a horse, and he was up in the air, and he pointed his finger at me like they had always pointed their finger at me, and they'd say, little girls just like her, they hung them on meat hooks. They would say things like that. And that guy pointed to me, that man, he pointed to me too, and he said, you're going to live, you're going to survive. And someday in your life, every question you have right now is going to be answered. And I'm going to be with you every step of the way. And he said, you will always find me, and I'll always be here for you. And I said to him, how will I know? And he said, you'll always find me in books. And, you know, all through my life, I'll get this feeling, and I'll run to a bookstore or a library, and this place I live, I have 5,000 books on Torah. Almost everything could ever find written. And I will go and my family has seen this happen. It's everyone who knows me has seen it happen. And I'll open a book and there will be what I have in my mind right there. And this has happened to me my whole life. And the question I will have in my mind, I will open the book and there will be the answer. And it's always happened. It's never not happened. And the most bizarre one was this one time I was walking down in LA. I had just come back from Israel. And this is true. My sister and my boyfriend were with me. So everybody thinks it's crazy, but it's true. And I even go, how could this happen? Because I'll be like, oh, I can't even believe this has happened. You know, I can't believe it either, but it does. But I was walking down Abbot Kinney, and I had just come back from Israel, and you know, I have this thing with books, and they talk to me too. They say, come over here, or I feel it, or I feel an attraction, and I go, and I'll go like this, you know, and then I'll go, and get the book and open it, and it's always the first page. So I'm walking down Abbot Kinney, and there's a red book on the corner by the pizza place. A red book is open and it's laying on the ground there, and we're walking, and I spot it, you know, from about a block away. I'm like, wow, why there's a red book open on the ground there, you know. I just notice it. So I get closer and closer. I'm like, okay, there's a book on the ground. Okay, something is coming. Something's going to happen. You know, that feeling you get when, you know, you're being spoken to by whatever it is, the infinite. And I go and I pick up the book and I open it. And what do you think the book was? What do you think? I've told Lowell this. What do you think the book was open to? The book was opened, I swear to God, the book was open to the healing mikvahs in Israel.
And you just come back from Israel.
Yeah, and it was the mikvah I had just been to.
So there's a word, min hashamayim. It wasn't a coincidence. It was
No.
meant to be. Not at all.
No, it just is. I don't even try to put any English words on anything anymore. But I took that book and, you know, it's funny because it was a Christian book. And it was, you know, Christians who want to know more about Judaism. But there it was, just, and those kind of things with books, they happen to me all the time. And, this stuff about synchronicity, that's the word. And so right now, I teach about the book of Esther, and the book of Esther tells us that that's how God works in the world now, is through synchronicity, how he speaks to us through synchronicity. So everything in my life is always very synchronicitous with the book of Esther and my, my understanding of it and my understanding of Judaism and my connection there, that connection that's so umbilical and so elemental and all of that. I don't know. I really went off on this thing, but I just feel like I can talk to you guys because you're all, whoever, you're all in here and here
Roseanne,
with
I just
me.
want to mention, I've had the great privilege to interview quite a few survivors. And when we went to Lithuania, there were many people on our tour that turned around and said, if only our parents or our grandparents would have told us, if only we would have known where they came from. And I've met some families of survivors and their grandparents or their parents, they never spoke. They didn't want to upset the kids. And I'd say, without a doubt, all those people whose parents never told them or never spoke, they sincerely regret it because it's a part of their lives that's lost and they don't know.
Yeah.
So
It's lost too, because like when we went and found, we found out through research that Aborniki, it doesn't exist anymore. It's been removed from maps. And my sister and I have, searched maps, but the entire town it no longer exists. But now I heard that Lithuania is offering people who can prove that their family came from there. They're offering, they want their Jews back. Everybody wants their Jews back now. Have you noticed? And they're offering farmland. Yeah, they're offering farmland if you could prove that you had a Jewish family from Lithuania. If you want to go.
Because when the Jews were there, it was a thriving, it was a different world. And you can see when you go to Lithuania today, it's, they lost so much.
My family were rabbis and cantors from way, way back, all the way back. Were always rabbis and cantors. So, yeah, people lose a lot when they get rid of their Jews.